Maybe I can start kind of where, based
no.
on where we were before. So what I was going to talk about, unless, shall I just start? I mean,
Go for it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
whatever you guys think is best.
I was going to just start by talking about the environmental studies program, and Sarah's heard some of this before, so I'm sorry.
But I
if
always
I'm-
appreciate that, yeah.
So I'm kind of doing the editing on the fly here. You know, I don't want to go on for too long. Let me say I've just sort of picked out some stuff from our website, so that's what you're seeing here. But let me start with our mission. Wait a minute. Oh, it doesn't show on there. The mission statement there is that environmental studies is dedicated to preparing students for interdisciplinary efforts to solve environmental problems. So we hope that our majors learn skills and ideas from multiple academic disciplines and experience the cross-disciplinary teamwork that generates effective environmental knowledge. So keywords there, well, the two keywords are interdisciplinary and teamwork, and I think those are two sides of the same coin because first of all, as the next slide will demonstrate, I just see environmental questions as inherently interdisciplinary questions. They're just really huge, big questions that about which there are many, many, many things to say and many different kinds of things to say coming out of, you know, I'm in the academic world, so I think of it in terms of academic disciplines, but there are other ways, you know, other more sort of practically oriented ways of thinking about them as well. So it's a big, complicated picture, and you just need all kind of intellectual hands on deck in order to get some kind of handle on it. But that handle is attained by going back to this other keyword. I wish the pointer worked. Teamwork is the way that happens. So the way I imagine thinking about the environment as, you know, how to operationalize that is to get a bunch of different people who have a bunch of different ways of, or a bunch of different kinds of expertise or different sort of things that they're familiar with around a table, like we are, having a conversation about whatever problem they're talking about and bringing all those different ways of thinking about it together. So that's how I've tried to organize the environmental studies program. There's a kind of lengthy history of this particular program here on campus that goes back to frankly to the mid-90s when a number of faculty and I put together a small, very even smaller program called Interdisciplinary Perspectives on the Environment, which was a minor at the time. And over the years that sort of evolved a little bit and ultimately developed into a major, changed its name to Environmental Studies. And I recently, I guess I'm in my third, and the end of my third year as director now. I came back to it after a lengthy time doing other things and really tried to, in a way, kind of refocus the program on this interdisciplinary mission, or interdisciplinary approach, I should say, by really thinking really as hard as I could about what it means to have an effective interdisciplinary training program. So in the past, and I was guilty of this when I first started thinking about it, in the past the idea was, well, you get the kind of the menu approach where, you know, you take one from column A, one from column B, one from column C, and boom, you're interdisciplinary because you've been exposed to all those different sorts of approaches. I don't think that actually works because you may have a number of different ideas, but if they're compartmentalized, if you don't put those ideas effectively into communication with each other, and in particular, if you don't get that experience of working collaboratively with people who have different kinds of interests and expertise than you do, then I don't think you get effective interdisciplinarity. So that's what our program is meant to do. And so a benefit of this is that it provides a kind of what's sometimes referred to as a T-shaped training, and this is just a little cliche in the whatever world it is that talks about this kind of thing. So people talk about a T-shaped education or T-shaped training, which has two components. One, a depth piece, the vertical piece, in which you get a pretty concrete skill that you get some real facility with. But along with that goes the horizontal piece, the cross-disciplinary breadth, which I think of as the ability to connect up with people who have different kinds of skills. So who's a baseball fan here? I'm not much of a baseball fan, sort of a baseball fan. Well, you know, the most beautiful thing in baseball is a double play, a really superb double play. But think about what it takes for a double play to happen. There's some real specialized skills involved on the part of the second baseman or the shortstop, who's really got to know how to field that ball and throw it. But then there's also the skill that the shortstop has or the second baseman has to catch and turn and fire it off to the first baseman, who's got some specialized skill. So each of those players has a real specialized skill. They've got that depth piece. But what makes it happen is their teamwork, the ability to put it all together, and that's what that cross-disciplinary breadth bit is supposed to be like for our program. So that's the kind of the aspiration for our program, that students will emerge in one. Say more about this. Will emerge with some degree of a kind of a focus on a particular discipline that they gravitate towards, but at the same time, the ability to connect up with other people who have different kinds of expertise, and I'll talk about how that can be implemented. So the major, I'll just talk for a couple seconds about the major itself, and then I'll end by saying a little bit about the role of environmental studies on campus. The major has two basic pieces. There's some electives and a core sequence. So I'll talk about the electives first. The electives, there are 15 hours of electives, and those are divided into two broad groups. There's a kind of single disciplinary group of the kinds of courses you would take across campus and other departments across campus, like ecology classes from biology, or environmental economics, or environmental geology in the geology department, so on and so forth. So those are where students start to get a feel for that disciplinary piece, and they get just a little taste of a number of different ways of thinking about the environment, either drawn from the natural sciences, the social sciences, the humanities, and also we have a category called applied disciplines, which are things like environmental law, for example, or landscape design or engineering. Those are courses that really focus on the sort of practical application of knowledge, as opposed to the more kind of theoretical, getting the big picture. In addition, students have to take a couple of courses that are designed to be interdisciplinary courses. That is to say, which bring together at least two broad approaches. And frankly, those are the kinds of courses that we offer ourselves as a unit. So students take some courses from us, but then they also take courses out in the university. So 15 hours of electives. And that's that kind of the menu piece, take one from here, one from here, one from here. But that other piece that I was talking about, that more integrative piece, comes in our core. So we have a sequence of courses that constitute the environmental studies major core. So let me just run down what that sequence is like. So it starts with that cornerstone class 2813. So let me say, first of all, this is not the first course that students take with us. I want students to come in already with some sense of what's going on in this program. I don't want them to be kind of exploring at this point. This course is like boot camp. This is where students say, okay, I'm with the program, let me really get started. And so in the Cornerstone, students literally, we lead them by the hand all across campus to gain exposure to as many different ways of thinking about the environment as we can fit in a semester. And that's not all of them, because there are lots of ways of thinking about the environment that are represented here on our campus. But we fit in, 8, 9 or so of them. So students go around to different units on campus, research units like the biological survey, for example, or departments that offer coursework like the history department, for example. We put them in touch with some operations folks. I don't know if have they spoken with you, I can't remember.
Well, actually, I believe that the course that I spoke to was the Cornerstone course.
Yeah, that's right. To get a sense of what's going on here on campus, we try to put students in touch with people in the public sector in the city. And so they get a sense of this sort of range of different ways of thinking about things. However, their real goal here is not just to kind of have that stuff thrown at them, but to really think about it. So they do stuff like interview faculty or other researchers to get a sense of how they, actually do the work that they do. They do some work with other students in the class trying to put these things together in an integrative way. And they're aiming in this course to start thinking about assembling a project that they'll do on their own in the next class. So the next step in that sequence there is the research project, 3893. So the next step on this path is for students to do something like an independent study research experience where they identify a problem that they're interested in and really go to work on it and try to figure it out. And they do that under the mentorship of a faculty person here on campus. So in the Cornerstone, what students are doing is starting to think about, well, what do I want to sink my teeth into, and who can I work with on that project, so that they really spec out what the project is going to be in advance, and then when the next semester comes, they can hit the ground running and really do the work. And there's some alternatives to the research project, but that's kind of the default kind of experience that students can have. For example, a service learning class would count in that slot. We were chatting about that idea before we started. So the next step on the sequence is a seminar. And that's probably the most sort of conventional academic class in the core sequence. The focus of the seminar is to give students an exposure to some really good interdisciplinary work on the environment of the sort that we'd like to imagine themselves participating in when they're done. So just as an example, and this is maybe not something a senior's going to graduate and then get started on necessarily, but take the IPCC reports, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Robustly interdisciplinary, right? From all kinds of different scientists and social scientists get together.
They just released one, didn't they? They just
Yes,
released one.
yeah. Well, they
do
release new updates periodically, and then there are sort of distressing reports about how
Distressing.
Yeah. How,
That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
They released one of those.
yeah, just the other day. Yeah. So what students will do in the seminar is take a look at one of those reports and try to figure out how did they do it. So of course getting the upshot of the report is important, but what's more important in that class is learning how it was done. That is to say, seeing how it is that academics and other specialists from different fields can assemble a unified, integrated product coming even out of their very different backgrounds. So after the seminar comes the capstone, and this is in many ways this is the culmination, as the name suggests, of the program, where we want students to do what we said in the mission statement, which is to work in a team to produce some effective environmental knowledge that's addressed to some practical problem. And so in that class we try to find some project that's local where students can do just that. And this semester I couldn't be more delighted by the project that they're doing, and this actually speaks to what we were talking about upstairs. Do you know the Kennedy neighborhood, the JFK neighborhood? Yes.
The explosions.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Among other things.
Among many.
Yeah,
others.
there's dust from the concrete facility, and the water issues. There's some seepage from that petroleum facility on the northeast corner of the site. So for people who don't know, the JFK neighborhood is in Oklahoma City. It's immediately south and east of the med school. So it's sort of an eastern extension of downtown. If you know what Deep Deuce was, the historically black part of town, before the interstate sort of took out Deep Deuce, that was built up, and this was just past that. So it's been I mean, it was always a black neighborhood. It was a red line neighborhood, so it was, one of those places that's a sort of a legacy of that fact of life in Oklahoma City, like the rest of the U.S. And not surprisingly, there was a number of what are sometimes called LULUs, locally undesirable land uses, were sited around the periphery of this neighborhood, including if you go on 240 heading east out of downtown. I mean, at this point, what you see are a lot of really trashy hotels, and I just shudder to think what those are about. But yeah, they're that's not
right
appealing.
next to Citgo refineries and things
Yeah.
of the sort.
Yeah, right. So there's a Delice gravel operation there, and then there's well, it's a recycling operation. It's a metal recycling operation, but they do cars, and it turns out, who knew, that people will send their cars to the junkyard with tanks full of gas, and so they smash them and kaboom, so those neighborhoods have to put up with that kind of stuff. And some, some other things as well. So anyway, it's historical neighborhood with a lot of, amazing, a great story in the past. It's not in great shape at the moment, although some evidence of renewal going on there, but with these environmental insults on its periphery. So it turns out that over in civil engineering and environmental science, which is in the College of Engineering, not our shop at all, there are these two guys who do an amazing thing with their capstone for environmental scientists and civil engineers, where they work with towns all over the state of Oklahoma doing environmental assessments and suggesting infrastructural improvements and stuff like that. They found out about the JFK neighborhood, which wanted some environmental monitoring done, and they reached out to me because I know them. In fact, where the genesis of that idea was when Knox gave, well, I guess both Knox and Nairn were both present when they gave their pitch on their capstone class in the PCC. So I said, wow, this is fantastic, just the kind of thing I'm trying to do in our capstone, and then the conversation got started, and they said, so they said, hey, what, maybe we can collaborate in some way. So their kids are doing the sort of environmental monitoring, the more technical stuff, and our students are doing more of a kind of social assessment of the neighborhood, doing oral histories and doing some documentation, and aiming to put that together into a kind of report, which ends up going to be there's going to be a repository for that at the public library. So this will carry on. So that capstone, that's an example. I think that's a really nice example of this is not a green area. There's some green in that neighborhood, but it's not like, oh, when we think environment, we're thinking of
trees and mountains.
Trees and mountains and saving the critters and all that. Saving the critters is vital, but that's not
our goal right now.
That's well, it's a goal. Maybe there are lots of other goals.
But
right?
all of the things that we do to address the issues, for example, in JFK neighborhood, over time, accumulatively get us to that green goal.
Right.
Well, no question. For one thing, green space is an integral part of a thriving neighborhood, and if part of what a goal is to think about, well, how should our neighborhoods be laid out? What should be well, we don't want things like exploding cars,
right next door.
Yeah, we don't want that, but maybe we do want parkland, and parkland has biodiversity implications. So, and in fact, there is some right on the south of that tract is a watercourse that I don't know what condition it's in, but no doubt there's wildlife in there. So yes, that's absolutely right. These things do come together, but it's really key, I think, to think that, or to recognize that when you say environment, people are part of that. They're not interlopers, they're not don't belong in the picture. They're the focus of the picture, I think. And we really need to, to think about that. So the capstone project is a real nice example of that, I think. Let me talk about one more piece of our program, and that's that other set of classes that you see, the learning community. So in order to have the capstone project, work well, the people doing it have got to like stand each other, right? They, right? They gotta be, they may not have to like each other so much, but they've got to be able to work together. And so there's a kind of social capital involved in developing those kinds of working relationships. And when students go out in the world and do this kind of work, we hope, if they choose, they've got to be ready to have that kind of, you know, that kind of relationship. So that's really a kind of a dispositional thing that's got to be cultivated, I think, among students. Even if there's goodwill, you just have to kind of get used to that mode of working. And that doesn't happen quickly. That doesn't happen, I don't know, in your operations, you know.
Oh, don't even.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Communication
Yeah.
is difficult as
And
is.
Yes.
you know, it's like the people who've been there for a while and have that kind of understanding of each other.
Right.
That's the platform from which anything else gets done.
Right.
So the learning community is designed to cultivate that. So the idea behind it is that it needs to take a certain amount of time, not a weekend, not a semester. It's a multi-semester endeavor, but you know, we can't lay on too much on the part of students. So the solution we came up with was to have a 3-hour requirement, since all of our courses are 3 hours, but divided up into 3 separate semesters. So for 3 semesters, students take this learning community. So it's kind of almost like in effect, a kind of official club for the major, or
Right.
our advisor calls it homeroom. You know, so it's a kind of an opportunity to like check in, engage in projects. I was talking with Sarah before about, you know, potential projects that that the learning community students can do, and they also do some more academic activities here on campus. Go to a talk and write a little report on it and stuff like that. So that's our core. They take those 4 courses that are in the red there, and then while they're taking those, they take the learning community course at the same time. So these are kids who are really working together a lot, and hopefully that provides a kind of platform for the activity that we were talking about. So let me just say one more thing about the role of environmental studies on campus. We see ourselves as one amongst a large number of environmental units on campus. And so that button there, if you were to click, if that were actually the website, we could click that, and that would take you to a listing of all the different environmental programs that are on campus. There are 9 or something. 9 degrees that have the word environment in their name, not even counting different majors within our own college that have significant environmental content. So we don't want to be the environmental program on campus by any means. We want to be a gateway to the environmental programs on
You
campus.
want to do school, like the College of Environmental Studies.
Well, not even that grand. I mean, you know,
Not even
ultimately,
that
yeah. I mean,
grand.
and here's why: for institutional reasons, because they're already players, you know,
Right.
and or incumbents, I think, is the right term. And they don't want to. They want to have that same role as well. So I'm very modest and say, look, we just want to be the information source. We want to be the website that if someone says environment at OU, they find our website, and then they can get to wherever they want to go with that. And that includes a list of all the different programs. The other button is the list of all the courses that have environmental content on campus. And in preparation is a directory of people who do environmental work, and we'll be adding that soon, I hope. We're also aiming for other like offices, like research centers that do environmental work. So this is the kind of the gateway function that we hope that we will play. So that's the basic story of the environmental studies major, and there's our website and email. So if you want to learn more, there you go. And at any time, you have it's Patricia.
Yeah. You can call me Patty.
Patty, okay. Patty's got my email, and you can always get my email. If there are any questions that come up, let me know. And I'll shut up, and I'm very eager to hear what you folks have to say, because I'm, as maybe you picked up, very eager to develop partnerships.
Yes, when
Um,
you brought up the JFK neighborhood, I was like immediately, yes, I need to know more about this.
It's interesting to me too.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe my perspective is academically biased to our speakers are, because it's like I didn't mean for it to all focus on city stuff because that's what I do, but it's like every single session has had something to do with that.
Yeah,
So not a problem at all, but there's interesting things I want to hear about both with y'all's work as that relates to it, and since you do work up there too.
well, one of the
Yeah.
things
We were
that has
talking
happened.
about the JFK neighborhood, what was that, months ago?
Yeah, we released an official statement from the Oklahoma State NAACP because basically the companies involved have said, well, we're not technically doing anything illegal in terms of the explosions.
Right.
Because of the air requirements or lack of
They're
them.
in compliance. Well, that's what the other group is testing. I think they may actually be in compliance.
Because that's what they say, and so
Yeah.
they're like, well, we technically don't need to do
Right.
anything about
Right.
it, but they're actively compromising people's state of life. So,
Yeah.
and it's a historically black neighborhood, and they're upper middle class black people. So these are just random people like Representative Pittman is one of the people who lives.
Oh,
in
well,
the
I mean,
neighborhood.
that's where Ralph Ellison went to high school.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and we just treat it like it's nothing. So.
Yeah.
But we've got a small presentation prepared. All right, how to be an advocate anywhere. So we kind of just wanted to open this up and sort of break down the barriers that might be in people's minds about the steps you go from from starting as an advocate to ending up as a professional. Let's see, I left the clicker way over there.
Oh.
Thank you. And we'll just take turns on the slides. She put in some, I put in others. Let's see. Oh, there we go.
Oh, so this one I put with just basic NAACP information, home of grassroots activism for civil rights and social justice, 2,200 units across the nation, powered by 2 million activists. We are the oldest civil rights organization in the United States, being founded in 1909. And we were founded by W.E.B. Du Bois. He's our founder, but Ida B. Wells, Thurgood Marshall, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, who else can I? John Lewis, the late, were all members and had organizational roles at the NAACP. That is NAACP's mission, to ensure the political, educational, social, economic equality of rights of all persons and to eliminate race-based discrimination. The NAACP's mission has actually changed. That is our most recent mission statement as of, I think, 2 years ago. It's always been along those lines, but it previously used to have much more race-based focus, which we have seen national NAACP and state conferences and us ourselves try to not be seen so much as the group that's immediately filing the lawsuit when the unarmed black man gets shot, and it's more as a proactive civil rights organization that's not as reactionary as we seem, because we are a civil rights organization, and to deal with politicians that are passing legislation, you have to file lawsuits. I mean, that's what it is. But just kind of changing some of that public perception that's of the NAACP.
And then this is environmental and climate justice. So environmental justice is the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people regardless of race, color, national origin, or income with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. So we all know disadvantaged communities, particularly those of color, are the first communities impacted by poor environmental policy, extreme weather responses in response to climate change. So it's important that the NAACP has a program within itself that recognizes these issues and does something about them. So it is a civil rights issue. We all depend on the physical environment to live and survive. If we didn't have an environment, none of us would be here. And so one of the really cool bits of history with the NAACP and environmental justice is the protests in Warren County, North Carolina in 1982. So what was going on was there was a ton of PCB waste that was dumped along the side of the highway, And the government, in deciding where to put this waste, where to store it, they decided upon a predominantly black neighborhood, black area, to add to the landfill there. And so the people of color in this area got together. They called in the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and they just jumped into it. 500 people, tons were arrested, like so many arrested, and despite all of their efforts, they still put the waste in that landfill. So it's kind of known to be one of the big sparks of the environmental justice fight in America, but it's sad that it didn't have necessarily the outcome that they were looking for. But people are still fighting for similar issues in today. So
And
here's some pictures.
it's important to note that it's a majority, the minority communities
Yeah.
are the ones having to be activists and be, the frontline faces
Right.
when it comes to this kind of stuff, because it majority of the time affects them.
Yeah.
And we have done zoning laws to perpetuate that, and so we're fighting against something that has big overreaching fingers, but little by little things.
And we see the same thing happening on the east side of Oklahoma City still to this day. There's 2 landfills in the city. One is on the east side, one is on the southeast side. So yeah, there we go. Toxic facilities like coal-powered plants, incinerators emit mercury, arsenic, lead, and other contaminants into the water, food, and lungs of communities. So just like I mentioned, the landfills in Oklahoma City one of them is relatively close to an elementary school, which is on one of these slides.
That one.
Yes, so as you can see, Crutcho Elementary is within a 2-mile radius of the Forest Park landfill.
Which is Oklahoma City.
Which is Oklahoma City. So kids go to this school, they're expected to learn and grow, but whenever you live in close proximity to toxic sites, you have a higher chance of developing cancer, learning disabilities, asthma, multiple things along that line.
And I believe, did you document their water quality?
I don't think I was able to get into the school because when I wrote the article, it was summertime. I don't think anybody was at the school.
Gotcha.
But yes, with my work through the Black Times, I did a piece called Environmental Racism in the east side of Oklahoma City, where it's a longer, in-depth, analysis of different things in play over there. And yeah, every time I drive through that part of the city, it's just ever so obvious the issues that they face.
How far north is that?
Huh?
How far north is that? What's the...
So this is actually on 23rd Street.
Okay.
So I want to say,
23rd
think-
Midwest Boulevard?
yes.
Yeah.
See, yeah. And then I'm going to go back to your slide. Yeah. So here.
This is, so when we talk, I was trying to make it a little more Oklahoma specific. So Oklahoma is we produce 1/3 of our energy, actually a little more than 1/3 as of 2020 from wind, and it's 9/10 of Oklahoma's total capacity for energy. So it's from all renewable resources. Sorry, so it's still a very small sliver that we get from renewable resources, which can tell us that there is room for growth for solar. If wind is 1/3 of our energy and 9/10 of all of our renewable, we have water generation plants and that are blocking off some rivers that are already existing. And there are a couple, believe in Norman, there's a solar project going on. Am I correct on that?
It is.
It is Norman. So there is room for growth when it comes to renewable resources. One thing that I tend to hear most from our legislators is when I spoke to them recently at the Incentive Evaluation Committee, I asked them about Oklahoma state incentive for wind generation. We used to have those tax incentives for a long time. They ended them in 2017. Governor Mary Fallin actually signed it, but the thing that is misconceived about this, which is important to have perspective and scope, is that they ended the tax incentive because we went over what the program was intended to do. We built more and we generated more than what was originally proposed in the program. So that was their reasoning for ending the incentive. However, I tried to make the case to them that maybe they should reevaluate that. But, ultimately that's something I have to go speak to my senator about. 4 in 10 of Americans live with polluted air. That's 135 million people in the United States. That just kind of was to go with Crucho schools and their air quality, and JFK neighborhoods, another place. The east side of Oklahoma City gets hit. And also the southeastern portion of the state also has pretty bad air quality.
At least the southeastern portion of the city. I don't know.
No, the state as well. There's one, I think it's southeastern. That is the portion of Oklahoma that's getting hit with Texas pollution. The majority of which makes sense.
Yeah, that would track because that's downwind of Dallas Fort Worth.
Yes, which is where they say, and they're saying that where I learned this was from the DEQ's board. They said that what is happening is they're seeing Houston pollution come up to Dallas, and then Dallas's pollution come up to Oklahoma, so they're really uncertain of where it's originally coming from, because Texas, there's a lot of places where it could be coming
a lot
from.
of big cities in Texas.
So they're still having issue exactly identifying, but I know that they talk about Dallas quite frequently because it's our closest one. So I at Rose State major in business administration. I graduate this year, but I plan to pursue economics. So I included the revenue from oil and the fact that we are fourth in the nation for oil and natural gas producing, because we have to think about this economically. $32 billion is a lot. Mining, quarrying, that industry is the bulk of our revenue. Surprisingly, the second biggest chunk is federal government spending, actually. We spend the most of our money on education, but this is, anyway, revenue that's coming from. So what's going to happen? When these wells shut down, what's going to happen to the companies? What's going to happen to that infrastructure? What's going to happen to the capital investments that these companies have made? And what can we start doing to start facilitating that change that we know needs to happen? Because economically, oil and gas is not a good financial investment right now. No one is going to tell you, yeah, go put $1 million in oil and gas. No, no one's going to tell you that. We had this discussion in my investments class. It's too volatile, and it's continuing to become more and more volatile as climate change becomes more and more a political issue. Because in the end of the day, fossil fuels is the carbon emitter. What are we going to do to get off of oil, fossil fuels, and addressing plastic? I mean, there's so many things that are made from oil as well that we also have to start considering. Yeah.
And then this is just a little bit about how to go from advocacy to policy. So it's important to remember that no matter where you're at in your advocacy life, there's no perfect timeline, there's no correct timeline. Wherever you're at, as long as you are doing everything in your, capability of doing what feels right to you, you will eventually get to be a part of that change. At least in my situation, I didn't really start this environmental journey in my life until I did join the Black Times. I started doing journalism where I was covering local protests, specifically politics and race relations. And eventually, after covering police brutality for over a year, you kind of get, beat down by that. Like, it's incredibly hard to digest and to regurgitate in a more palatable way for a wider audience. And so I wanted to sort of shift focus to a different area of racism that isn't as easily seen in the media. And so that's when environmental justice sort of came into play. after writing the article with the Black Times, I was approached by President Douglas with the state NAACP, and he had told me that their environmental and climate justice chair had just stepped down, and he needed somebody to fill the spot. And so I was like, yeah, I would love to help in any way that I can, and then basically hit the ground running. So you don't necessarily need to go find an environmental group to get to whatever place Patty and I are at now. It's just being an advocate for what you care most deeply about in any sphere that you may or may not be in. Yeah, so getting involved and staying determined is the main thing. Obviously, the climate crisis comes with a ton of anxiety. There's a lot of people in our generation who just feel the impending doom of the climate failing or changing in a way that is no longer habitable for humans. Because obviously the earth will bounce back with or without us. So it's really about securing the right for our future generations to get the same opportunities that we have right now. So yeah, staying determined is key, and staying determined also comes with self-care. I know we talk about self-care a lot, but you can't spend every minute of your day like absorbing, scary information about climate, about racism in America, all of these super sensitive subjects. So it's okay to have downtime, and it's okay to focus on other things in order for you to keep your sanity. And then, yeah,
I've tried the alternative.
that's what we're trying to preach, is taking time for yourself so you can apply yourselves in the areas that you care most about and show up 100% as you can. But so we wanted to know what efforts you all might be working on that the NAACP could amplify from our position.
Right off the bat, I actually, if I may, had a lot of things that you've mentioned working on that I was like, oh, do you know this person? Do you know this person? The first one right off the bat is Vanessa Morrison. Do you know Vanessa Morrison?
That sounds really familiar.
She's with the Institute for Quality Communities here. She's the under director. I don't know why I can't think of the word. Assistant director, I guess. And she also coordinates a group called Black Space Oklahoma or Black Space OKC.
I think they might follow me on Twitter.
Possibly, yes. And I believe they're wrapping up a couple year-long project in maybe not exactly the JFK neighborhood, but very near that area.
Okay.
That's ringing a bell. I think I've seen that website.
Yeah.
Quite
I think
possibly.
I've seen their presence on
Yeah, that's why maybe I'm.
Yeah.
That's sounding.
But she'd be good to reach out to, and not like, oh, it's Jake, but
Yeah.
if you mentioned that you knew me that way, then it
we
might
always
explain
name
the
drop.
direction.
If you
Yes.
send me in the direction of somebody, I'm
There you go. Name
gonna
drop like,
tell
we
you that's
spoke at
the
that
way.
thing you tried to host, and so that could be useful.
What's the
And
last name?
Vanessa Morrison. Yeah. Additionally, I think some interesting things for talking about specifically, urban environmental justice. We just recently hired a new professor in the geography and environmental sustainability department here named Lauren Mullenbach. I tried to work with her on a research thing, but I got rejected. There was probably a better candidate for that position, but I can. No, I appreciate it. Thank you. Probably someone with more time to dedicate towards it. But Dr. Mullenbach is specifically doing academic level research on urban environmental justice, gentrification, green gentrification, things like that.
There's a lot of gentrification.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the East Side.
The East
I
Side.
don't know if I was prepared for that, but
Yeah.
when you look at the whole history of the East Side, it's like you said, started in Deep Deuce. That was the black community in Oklahoma City. Then they built the highway.
Yeah.
The Great Depression hit. Railways started to close down, so they moved further north to 23rd Street. Then they were moved further east, and then they designated the area immediately east of the Broadway extension as an industrial zone. So that's why we have all those industrial things there. But people still live relatively close to that. So yeah, just the history of Oklahoma City is very clear that black people belong in dirty areas further away out of view. And now that they're trying to gentrify the area closer to the capital, obviously not past I-35 because that's close to the landfill. And if you see the landfill, then there's no way of pretending that you don't. So it's definitely happening. It's rather slow, but it is extreme. Like if you look at houses on the East Side that are for rent, they will be close to $1,500 a month, but they don't come with a washer or dryer or a refrigerator. So it's like, who's gonna live here? Because like most of the people on the
yeah.
east side who already deal with not having a vehicle, I think it's something like maybe one vehicle per 3 households on the
Yeah.
east side. And there's no viable source of public transportation. Another thing that we advocate for is the streetcars that they built in downtown Oklahoma City would have been way more useful if they were on the east side of town.
Yeah.
People would have used them every day. We wouldn't be losing money because of it. But the streetcars, they don't see a lot of usage on a day-to-day basis. Typically, whenever they do see usage is on the weekends or at nighttime, and it's more of like a fun thing to do than a practical one. So those are just some of the many things happening over there.
Absolutely.
But both of the people you mentioned, I'm gonna look for them and reach
For
out to them.
They might be useful partners. And then one more, and then I'll, I'm not trying to dominate with all just these names that I can drop, but one of the people we worked with in my like practicum class, basically for my undergraduate degree. Well, we worked with the town of Tallahassee out east, and one of the corporate partners that that town wants to bring in to hopefully, help revitalize it is a company called Utopia Plastics.
I was going to mention
You were gonna mention. Sorry, I beat you to it
I
there.
haven't heard about it.
They I guess make like plant-based like extrudable plastic material, and I believe it's a black-owned company, a
Black
woman-owned
woman
company.
owns it. Let me see if I can pull her
And
name.
it's her last name is Perry, and I wondered if she was
The
related
Perry
to.
Publishing.
That's what I was
yes,
wondering if she was related to
a
Russell
super
Perry.
prominent black
Yeah.
family. They own Perry Publishing. I think it's the Black Star. I don't know if it's the Black Star or the Black Chronicle. I get them confused. But yes, very, very prominent family on the east side.
Yeah.
So.
And I don't know if she is. It could just be same
Is
last
she
name.
building? Is that confirmed?
The business really exists, but
The business exists for sure.
yeah. I know that they're currently located in Oklahoma City. I think they have been in talk. It's been about a year since I've been involved with that project because it was for my class, and then I haven't had a chance to touch back in. But the IQC has still been working on it, so I could reach out and ask. I think that the town definitely wanted to try and get them out there, and then I think they.
So
I don't know what their perspective on it was.
You said Tallahassee is where
or Tallahassee actually.
Tallahassee,
It's like
yeah,
Tallahassee.
yeah.
Sharina is her name.
So that's where they're.
Sharina Perry.
Sharina Perry.
That's where they built the facility.
They haven't yet, as far as I know.
That's what they're
but
talking
the
about.
the town is. I could go into a whole thing about just the town. It was one of the older, like all black townships in Oklahoma. Oklahoma has had a lot of them historically, and there's not very many that are left, sadly. And that one I think has had a population decline in the last 50 or so years that brings it down to a few dozen people.
But they'll be able to manufacture
That's what they're trying to do is like
or
this.
process? Because there's no, like, for
Yeah.
example, the reason why the hemp industry has not kicked off to the
Mhm.
way that I think it should be kicking off
Mhm.
is because there are very limited processors that
Right.
exist in the U.S.
Right.
So it's not economical to
Mhm.
grow hemp if you can't sell it to anybody.
Yeah.
So it would be great for
Mhm.
our farming community if
Mhm.
she's able to process any form of plant-based
Right.
material.
I don't know
But
if it's named after her.
She was in the Soft Climate program last year.
I didn't get
Oh,
to
was
see.
she?
Oh, last year.
Yeah,
That
no,
happened.
last year.
Okay, okay. Oh, cool.
And I can direct you to the YouTube for that, in which she talks about her let's see.
Product and everything.
Yeah, where is that? It's online someplace. I'll find it in.
What did
Yeah.
you say her name was?
Sharina Perry. And where's all my correspondence?
that's really good to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah, I looked at their website and the product. I think they have like products that they've successfully made, but it's like you say, like the actual manufacturing is interesting.
If they can even, white label and other companies can use their facility. I'm thinking
Mhm.
big because I want
Mhm.
more people to be growing hemp because
For sure.
it could be a carbon sink as well.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I just have a quick question.
Mhm.
So you guys obviously spend a lot of time here at the university. Are you all registered to vote here? Do you live in Norman?
Okay, this is the second time I've had to answer no this week. I
Okay.
moved to Norman and I was kicked out of the voter registration online system 3 times. So
We'll
I'm,
help you.
I'm going
Don't
to go
worry.
to the
Wait, no.
I
wanna
have to
hear-
publicly.
I want to hear your experience with the website because I had a problem logging in one time as well, and I waited the next day, and then I got into my voter portal.
Okay,
So
I
I'm
tried on
curious.
multiple occasions. It won't save. It won't let me move forward to the final submission.
Of your application.
Yeah,
Do you do it on the laptop or on your phone?
on a laptop.
Okay.
Yeah.
Figures out my issue. Because sometimes things don't work on the phone like they do on the desktop.
Right. I was just gonna go in and do it with the election board.
Yeah,
That's a good
you can for sure, but I mean, I got on there 2 days ago. I helped someone get an absentee ballot, so I would try again.
I was like, it has been a couple weeks.
You
so,
try
yeah.
again, because I got someone and remember to get your absentee ballot and sign up for that as well, because that way you know when the local elections are, you know what the ballot looks like, you know exactly who you're going to be voting for, because you don't know usually sometimes. Unless you
Usually
go.
a review on ballot PDF, that they don't have all of not everything's reflected.
Right.
But everything will always be there on the absentee ballot. You'll get it weeks ahead of time. I usually don't fill out the absentee ballot. I just look at it, and then when I go to vote in person, you have to sign a special piece of paper. But that question was sort of a segue into the water bond that they attempted to pass here.
Yeah.
What are our thoughts? I want to know from the Norman community, yes or no? What did you vote? What did you hope would happen?
I would have voted to pass it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
and
I
it's interesting, we were discussing this with our speakers
Oh, there we are.
last
Couldn't
Yeah.
find you. Oh,
That-
Patty.
Are you familiar with, that Norman is different, that it is a vote that takes place, that residents have the ability to set the rates versus other cities setting those
No, I wasn't aware of
independently.
that.
So I think that they've hit a lot of barriers, giving people that opportunity to say no to increasing their utilities. But no, I think that we certainly need to invest in an infrastructure that is maintaining our access to clean water.
Yeah, because you'll still have to find a way to meet the DEQ requirements. You just won't have the money from the city to do it.
Oh yeah, and the DEQ does not have the money. I know,
Not for that, but for a parking garage, they do.
which is double
We
the
will
yearly
talk about
budget.
that all
Yeah,
day.
all the time.
We just had Patrick Riley from the DEQ last week. I'd be happy to give you the email.
Oh,
I don't know.
They know me. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Good.
okay.
They know me.
The parking garage, it's just like, yeah.
I think as far as the failure of that bond, I don't think the city really pushed that bond the way they have in previous elections, and I don't know what the story behind that.
Yeah, I didn't
But
hear
it was
about
also
it until
a-
after.
It was a, I wouldn't say a wave election exactly, because if you look ward by ward, but the kind of big townwide stuff was going a certain way, and
Exactly.
Normanites never want to pay for anything.
No,
Mhm.
that's why we still have bad drainage systems.
Yeah, no, they never
Right.
want to.
Yeah, sadly, I
That's
obtained-
a really unfortunate feature of Bria's defeat, because there's this stormwater
Mhm.
issue that we're
Right.
never going to face now.
No, it's not happening.
Yeah.
I don't have to take off.
Oh, okay.
I would love to be on the potential partner list for
Yes, of
you
course.
folks.
Yeah.
Because I don't, for one thing, at a minimum, we're thinking about whether we want to, do round 2 with the JFK neighborhood next year. We may not, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I would love to, just have conversations about other ways we can get our students involved.
Yes.